I am honored to be with Ian Schon, founder of Schon Design Pens. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thanks for having me, Noah.
It's great to have you. As we've been doing this the last several episodes, this has been a season about companies that make their own product. And we started out the season with Wilson Bohannon, a company that's been making locks for 160 years. And now we are going the other way, and we are going to talk to Ian, whose company has been around for 2 years, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I guess officially in this rendition, I call it version 3, has been around for 2 years, but I started it in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, it's still really new.
Still a young company, very young.
I mean, I'm a young guy. There's no way I'm going to have a company that's old at this point.
No way you're going to found a company that's old unless you founded it when you were 5 or something. Then you never know.
I mean, that would be a pretty legendary story, and here we are, babypreneurs with Noah Graff, the children who started their empires before they knew how to walk.
It's not inconceivable. You never know, but
you never know.
So first, I'm going to want to learn about your company and learn a little bit about you. But to get into things, I would like to know, what is a typical day for you in 30 seconds?
Yeah. Like to do a little core workout, stretch. I'm a big cyclist and mountain biker, so I want to keep my body moving throughout the week, even if I'm not riding. So I'll get up and move around. I'll probably eat something, grab a bite, and then drive to work. Not a long commute. It's about 25 minutes across the city of Philadelphia, and jump into the shop, turn on the compressor, drain the compressor, fire up the machines, and hopefully continue production with no big alarms in the morning, and get a couple machines running.
Which machines? Your Citizen.
The Citizens. This year it's been all about the Citizens. So I'll get those running production, and usually I'll do my insert changes the day before. So I'll make sure that everything's ready to go in the morning, because I'm groggy. You wake up and you go change inserts, you're gonna mess something up. You're gonna drop it in the chip pan. Oh, God, so I get the machines running, finish, get them set up the day before, and once production's kind of rolling, I'll sit down at my desk and do emails for a little bit, try and respond to customer inquiries, and then I'll look at today's list, whether it's doing a photo shoot for some new product, or writing a program for a new part that I got to run, or doing some R&D stuff, running a couple experiments, working with some freshly machined parts to try and qualify a new design, updating the website, doing some finance stuff. Who knows? But it's every day is different. The only constant is that usually I got 1 to 2 machines running at once. This coming year, I want that to be 3 to 4 machines running at once, which I'm working on right now. So yeah, that's the day in the life, and go home, hopefully not too late.
What time do you go home?
My God. I want to say aspirationally 6:30. I'll leave the shop, be home by 7, but I'd be lying if I told you that was the reality of the situation. As a solopreneur, you end up working until the parts are done. So I can kick out of here some days at like 4, if in the summer, shut it all down, sneak out to the Wissahickon, go for a single speed mountain bike ride.
5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week?
I do 5. I had a really bad track record of doing 6 and 7 for a long time. So I'm doing 5 now, and I'm really proud of it. Every once in a while, I'll jump into the shop on the weekend and just do some light stuff, cleaning. I'll organize some things. I'll try an experiment or something fun. I won't even look at my computer. But yeah, man, I used to have my workshop in my house in 2012 through 2015.
Okay.
And when I had my workshop in my house, I worked 7 days, and I worked my day job, and then from
All right,
7
Ian.
o'clock until 11, Whew.
I'm impressed. You're very organized. You're also crazy busy. All right, let's back up. What does your company make? What
It's a
is
great
Ian
question.
Schon Design?
Yeah. So Schon Design is a pen manufacturing company. And my first products started off looking like this. This is a ballpoint pen. I had this idea that the
You got
pen
to be
should be
very, very descriptive because a
the
lot of
pen
people
should
are
be
just
like,
listening.
they can't see the pen. Imagine I'm holding up a beautiful pen and it's just awesome and you love it and your eyes are transfixed. You're deeply
All right,
you're in a
describe this
trance.
pen. Describe it.
It's a metal pen. It's a pen it's very compact when it's in your pocket, and
It's
then you
got
can
threads on
unscrew.
it, and then
It's
you
got unscrew the cap, and you can screw post it on the back. It's got a ball point, and it's it's about a 1/2 inch diameter, 4 inches long.
okay.
And I started machining these pens. They've got a set screw in the back. It's like a very engineered, like kind of old timey slotted brass set screw with 2 chamfers on both sides. Unscrew that. You can take out the ink cartridge. It's very mechanical. It's very, there's a stain on this one. There's a stainless steel clip with 2 very small Torx
Had you
screws holding
seen
it in
had you
place.
seen anything like that with the set screw before on another pen?
No, but I got obsessed with set screws when I was in engineering school because all right, so like, let's say you're like a civilian and you're not an engineer or a mechanic or a designer or
Oh,
anyone. It's like,
so I'm a civilian.
you're a civil. Let's say you're a civilian. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know about set screws until I was in engineering school because I went to engineering school and people were like, there's this set screw. It's a non-headed screw. And I was like, what? Because I never worked on cars growing up and bikes. I worked on bikes, but they didn't have set screws. I was like, set screws are cool. I want to design something with a set screw. So for some reason, this project I was like, wait till you hear my big idea. I'm going to hold the ink in with a set screw. It was like, I don't know. This was a whim. I made a pen on a whim, but Schon Design makes pens, right? So
Okay, you make pens. You
we
make
we make
3
ballpoint
pens, right?
Ballpoint pens. We make fountain pens. I'm holding up a faceted brass fountain pen that has a ton of really cool machining geometry on it. Similar
What
to the
material is it?
This one is brass. It's a C360, and this is heavily patinaed. It's beautiful. It's got a fountain pen tip, and then I also make roller balls, which are essentially like smack dab in the middle between a fountain pen and a ballpoint. It's got a ballpoint for the tip of the pen, but it uses liquid ink. So I make pens.
I was wondering about that. And one of your videos explained it, which I thought was awesome.
I think I shot that video on Friday.
What'd you say?
I shot that video on Friday.
Oh wow! Give
Isn't
us
that funny?
give the nitty gritty real quick. What's the difference between the 3 pens? Like a little more specifically.
Totally. So when you think about someone who really loves pens, they're probably into fountain pens. And I say that because there's so many variables, right? You have the ink color, you have the width of the tip of the fountain pen, the nib, they call it the nib, right? So let me see if I can find my camera here. For those of you at home who are not watching the video, I'm holding up a stainless steel nib, and it's got a very fine point at the top. But these tips can be customized by a nib smith, kind of like a nib specialist who would grind it to your style. And let's say you like to write in cursive italic. They would grind the nib so that when you write with it, it produces a cursive italic stroke. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a piece of, it's like, and
Just the nib
is there
itself.
anything, there's nothing practical about a fountain pen, but it makes you feel something. So these pen people who, and of which I am one, and there's many different types, they love being able to explore the different facets of the writing experience. What color ink? Oh, when the ink dries, it's got a different hue. It's got green, purple, or like whatever it is. There's all these and I don't even understand all this stuff yet because I'm new to fountain pens, but it's a beautiful thing.
How do you make the fountain? Do you make the fountain part, or you buy that?
No, I buy the tip.
Yeah,
But
I
one
was
of my
gonna say
projects.
that looks like a whole nother deal, making the tip.
Well, hold on. It's a whole nother deal, but that's where I'm going. So I'll tease something right now. I'm holding up an anodized blue Pocket 6 fountain pen, which is my like flagship pen, and this has a titanium nib in it, and it's probably not going to focus, but anyways, it's got a anodized titanium nib that I made for this pen. This is an in-house manufactured nib, and there's very few brands that make their own nibs because it's freaking hard. It sucks to make them, and you can buy nibs for inexpensive amounts of money, and they can be customized to become something greater. But making nibs is kind of one of those things that, I feel will in the future differentiate me from being a person who makes nib holders, things that hold nibs that other people made, to actually being a pen manufacturer. And that's a weird, I'm not poo-pooing anyone who does the same thing that I do, not making nibs. That's, there's plenty of craft in the pen side of it. However, I believe that as an engineer, as someone who's so technical, I want to pour myself into that piece of the puzzle because it's interesting. It's got a thin slit in it. It's a cool manufacturing challenge.
Sure.
It's tricky to
It
do it.
it looks really tricky. Okay, and then ballpoint versus rollerball. You briefly mentioned that.
Great question. So the ballpoint pens have an ink cartridge that is, let's say, it's like a metal cartridge that you swap the whole cartridge, and you're ready to go. You're ready to write again. With a rollerball, the ink cartridge is a liquid ink cartridge, and it's for those of you who can see this, I'm tipping up and down a cartridge that's got vibrant purple ink inside of it, and it's truly liquid. It's moving all over the place, right? So this cartridge is actually a fountain pen cartridge, and the ball tip is its own unit, you could call it a rollerball unit. And instead of integrating the two, where you would just swap the whole thing and swap in another cartridge, you're just changing the ink on this system. So the rollerball is an ink. Well, they both are liquid ink, but the rollerball is a reusable tip, whereas the ballpoint is not. And with that comes the ability to choose your ink. Let's say you went to Japan and you were at this fountain pen store. You were in Kingdom Note fountain pen store, and you found this limited edition Pilot ink from the Japanese 20th, whatever. Like, you find this ink that just is like, it hits you like right in your heart. That's the ink that you want in your pen. And with a ballpoint, you can't have it. But with a rollerball, you can. So if you're into this stuff and you're into the culture of collecting inks and finding things that are different than the conventional pen that you'd get from a bank, then you dive and you may dive crazy deep, or you may just be like, oh, I like how it flows. It writes a little smoother. And that's why I like fountain pens. I don't care about the ink. I don't care about the paper, but like, maybe you do care about all of it. And it becomes just it becomes the spice of life, right? The reason that writing a note to your friend feels good is because you use these amazing tools, and it's just like, sure, you could use, like the same thing.
That's what I was going to ask. I'm like, we're in a digital age. We're in an age where, everybody's just talking on the phone. We've been doing that forever. Now we're talking on Zoom. Everybody's texting everywhere. To me, pen almost seems, it's a little bit like a watch, which you also dabble in that it's in to some degree it's not a necessity because we have other products um to fill in for that. Uh, so who's your audience demographic? Where I'm assuming it sounds like Japan is big for pens.
I think they're like culturally speaking, there's like a little bit more baseline appreciation for pens in Japan, and in
Is that
Germany
because
as
of the writing? Because of the letters that you're writing?
the kanji. Maybe I'm sure. I'm sure that plays into it because there are certain with Chinese characters, which are also Japanese characters. They're the side stroke versus the vertical stroke, being able to differentiate between those two by having two widths is very important. So there's actually two types of nibs that do that really well. One, the architect point, which is ground very thin in the center and super wide across, and two, the stub nib, which is super wide down and very thin across. Being able to differentiate between those two is important. But in Germany, there's also fountain pen culture.
Interesting.
And sometimes when I'm at American pen shows, someone says, someone will walk up to my booth. They'll be maybe in their like late 60s, and they'll be like, "Oh, fountain pens. I remember the nuns used to beat me when I would write with the fountain pen." I was like, "Oh my god, oh shit, oh, I'm so sorry." Like digging up these they're like hold it like it's like this evil, like it's like like some evil token. But the culture of fountain pens is not as big in the US. And if it was, you were getting beaten by the nuns, and it's maybe it's not so great. But I don't know. I never grew up with fountain pens, so I'm a N of one here. But who are my customers? They're just people who like to write with nice things. And I think that translates into people who just like nice stuff in general. Like, let's talk about watches for like 2 seconds. I do manufacture watches as well. I have another brand called Schon Horology, where I machine watch cases and hands and dials, etc. And who
Wow.
are my customers for that? It's kind of the same ethos. People want something that's made by a person, right? Because there are plenty of places to get a great watch. There are plenty of places to get a great pen. Why not buy a Mont Blanc instead of a Schon? Brand recognition, whatever. Like, my customers care that they care about this right here. Like, the fact that they have access to the person who does the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how often do you buy a product where you get to know the guy or gal who does the stuff? And I do Instagram stories where I'm trying to set up a tool, or I'm indicating in a tool block, or I'm changing a program, or trying to manage chips,
Right.
and give people a window into this world of machining, or where I'm talking about design and aesthetics and engineering choices, and the the fun like weird things that I make, and the who is as important as the what. The experience is as important as like let's say the journey is as important as the destination with my products. And that may sound, for those who don't like me, it makes them like me even less, right? It pushes you further, like, oh, this guy's a fucking asshole, like he sucks, he's so like, I don't want to see his face, I just want to see some pens, less talk, more pen. But for those who do care about the community aspect of things, or the maker aspect of things, or like being inspired by a story, it's great. They love it.
Do you see
I think they love
yourself,
it. Oh,
do you see yourself as a designer or a manufacturer, or both, or something
I'm both.
else?
I'm both. And I think that's where for me, that's like the secret sauce, is that like I do it all. There are certain things I couldn't do if I wasn't the manufacturer and the designer. And I think
Let's back up. I know I'm
yeah.
interrupting you.
No,
Uh,
please.
um, all right. I want like the 3-minute version of how you got here, where you are You're making these pens on Citizen machines primarily.
Hmm.
So it seems like to me your two passions are pens, watches, that's just three passions, and then the creation of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
So
yeah.
so 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 tell me, you started as an engineer when you were 18.
Hmm. So I started engineering school when I was 18. Before that, I grew up in Baltimore. I was big into the music scene, DIY culture. Hey, let's start bands. Let's book our own shows. Let's make our own venues. Let's
Oh,
do it ourselves.
do it
Do it
yourself. Okay.
yourself. Yeah, I was part of a bicycle co-op. I was into cycling. We were building bikes for people in the city. We're helping people fix up bikes. It's very like empowering, very just like go get it done and be a part of this thing that's bigger than yourself. So that's like my growing up. Then I went to BU, was getting an engineering degree because
Boston
I like to make
University.
stuff. Boston University, thank you. I was like, I want to learn to make stuff better and be that guy that can just make
And so you
anything.
thought,
That's
oh, engineering. That makes
engineering.
sense.
That makes sense, right? But it was not very hands-on. So I was like, whoa, how do I get my hands on this stuff? So I got really into the idea of machining, and I started, trying to find machines to work with. And I ended up over at MIT at the Electronics Research Society, this little club
Mm.
called MITRES, which was like kind of like a hacker space vibe. And the people were really cool, and they had a bunch of machines, and it was like totally not OSHA anything. It was like really sketchy, and they got shut down a couple times, but now they're still open. They're an amazing space, and I love them dearly. But anyways, I started working there, turning the handles. I ended up working at a physics shop at Boston University and taking a course through them, which was incredible. And that's like a whole nother story. But yeah, I started turning the handles, and then I went home one year, from college. I think it was after my first year, my freshman year, and I wanted to play with machines more. And I was working at a bike shop in Baltimore over the summer, and I went on Craigslist, and me and my brothers, we bought a $300 Clausing, from the 40s, and me and my brothers lugged it out of the basement, and we
I'm
were
sure
like
they made them better
bloody.
back then anyways.
Yeah, they were nice machines. That was a cool machine. I didn't even have a gearbox on it for threading, so I was like just using dies and taps. But whatever, got it done, right? So I got this lathe, put it in my parents' garage. Very thankful that they allowed me to use that space, while I was home for the summer. And I just started making chips, and I started making pens because my friend had a cool pen, and it was cool, but I didn't like it. I wanted it to be shorter. I was like, I had a
So
vision
you
to
were
do that
already,
stuff.
but you were already all about pens.
I was like, I just want to make stuff, right? So like,
You hadn't been a pen collector yet, or
no. I'd never bought a nice pen before I made a pen. And I just I like the concept of, I care about something, so let me go make that thing for myself. And it was not about commerce. It was the purest thing. I used to make my own backpacks when I was in high school. I would sew these bicycle messenger bags, and I'd wear them around the city. People were like, "Can I buy that?" And I'm like, I'll give you the template. Here, let me make an instruction set. And I ended up teaching a class at a local church on how to make bicycle messenger bags. Hysterical, right? As like 17-year-old. But like, I always liked this idea of making things. I made hats, I made wallets. I was like that kid who made stuff out of duct tape. It's like, weird,
and
little weird.
I like
But
making things too to some extent, but I'm very slow. The
that's,
amount of stuff that you make, it sounds like you know how to make things pretty efficiently.
I don't know that I'm efficient. I think I have perseverance. I bite in and I sink my teeth in, and I will not lose sight of it. When I was that summer that I bought that lathe, I also was building bicycle frames, because the pinnacle in the cycling world in my mind was like, not to, I was racing too. I was racing bikes, but I was like, I want to build the frame that I'm racing on, because that is just like the ultimate flex. And not like in a, well, I mean, a little bit, in like an egotistical way. I want to be racing my own frame, sure, but also just because like it's freaking cool. It's just so cool. it's so cool to, number one, know the person who built your bike. If you pay a custom builder to get one, that's great. But to make your own bike, it's like wild. And I was like this 19-year-old kid. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to be like legit. And to me, in my mind, it was like, I'm going to build my own bicycle frame. So I went to MITR's, MIT. I built my own frame fixture out of 80/20, and I machined the cones to hold the head tube. Those are the first parts that I turned, were the cones to hold the head tube on my
Wow.
bicycle frame fixture. That's crazy. I just remembered that. And then like the bottom bracket threaded thing and all the fixtures to hold the rear triangle. Anyways, I made bicycle frames and I just sunk my teeth in and I figured out a way to do it. When I was younger as well, I also sold jewelry. I was making like chainmail jewelry. Again, like, you know, sinking my teeth into something. And I was selling the jewelry on a site called Blue Jay, which I think was pre-Etsy. And I used that money to pay for my band's tour. And then, you know, again, you kind of like take one money from one thing and put it into another thing with the bicycle frame building and all that stuff.
But
It
how do
was
you have
like,
time? You're like, you're racing bicycles, you're
yeah,
building all this stuff, you're in a
yeah,
band.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Just
you,
busy,
you,
man. Extracurriculars. It's my life. I love it.
absolutely. And I'm
But
sure you've got some other
man,
things, you know?
yeah, there was a lot. So I got briefly into making knives for a very small amount of time. And I completely jumped out of that because I sucked at it. And I would just like, I don't know. I just like didn't have it didn't stick. So not everything sticks, right? It's like not everything was like a total home run. The bicycle frames, I built 3 frames, 3.5, and I still have them. They're great. I actually ride one all the time that I built. It was the second bike I built. It was a cyclocross bike, fantastic bike. The third bike I built was a stainless steel cyclocross bike, and that cracked because it was made with this tubing that was like really on the edge at the time. But I wanted to be like the youngest guy to build with this American-made seamless weld stainless tubing. Like it was like again, like another thing where I was like, they say you can't do it, let's go do it, you know? So, but anyways, I got really into college. I got really into building stuff. I'd go home for summers. I'd work on things. I'd be making pens. I'd be making bikes. And I was trying to build a portfolio so that I could become a product designer, which is what I set my sights on when I was in college. I wanted to be the guy that you come to or work for the company that you go to design your products, to have them made. I wanted to be the person that they asked, how do we make this? And I'd be like, well, you can cast it, you can machine it, you can injection mold it, you can whatever. I wanted to be that person.
Okay.
So I had my sights set on working in product development.
Did you get an
And
engineering degree?
Yep, and I got an engineering degree for 4 years. But, you know, outside the engineering degree, I was doing all these extracurriculars. I was building this portfolio of work that enabled me to say, hey, I know about engineering. I got my degree, but I also did this stuff. Here's what I did, and here's how I approached solving these problems.
And
Because
they
it's not just
wanted
about
you, they wanted you when they saw that portfolio.
they did. And I think for any young listeners out there, like portfolio, you got to have it. Show us what you can do. Or even people who are looking to change careers, build a portfolio of stuff that you do and show people, communicate the portfolio is as important as the work itself. The ability to talk about a complex idea and a complex execution and be like, here's how I did it step by step. So I built this asset that like kind of documented my life, and it got me into a job at a company called Essential Design, where I was doing pro audio equipment. I was doing scientific instruments for mass spectrometry. I was working on, what else did we do? We did some home goods. We did a bunch of cool stuff, but again, it was gun for hire. You know, projects were short. You might be on 2 or 3 projects at once. And I worked there. And again, nights and weekends outside of that, there was like a whole nother world. You know, I was still doing pens. I'd been
So when
pushing
did
on
you
the
start
pen
making
thing.
the pens? 2012?
2011, I machined my first pen. I finished it.
Okay, so
Um,
what made you go, I want to make a pen? I mean, first, like, this makes me feel old, but you know, I'm 40, you're 30.
40 is the new 30. Just saying.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to think that.
It is. It is.
But I mean, when I was in lecture hall in college, we used pens. I mean, crappy pens. When you were in lecture in college, did you guys use pens or did you have a laptop? or tablet?
Um, I had a laptop, but it was kind of a desktop, so I never brought it to class because it was so heavy. It was like 9
Okay, so you
pounds.
took notes using a pen.
I did, and it wasn't a great pen either. You
But
know,
what do people do now?
oh, I don't know. Students now? I
Yeah.
have no, I have no idea. I'm out of touch. I have no idea. I just did a Zoom lecture last week. I gave a Zoom lecture at BU, so I think they're using computers. But I saw some people writing some things down. So people still use pens and pencils. But when I looked around the classroom, either I wasn't noticing it because I wasn't in the world, or people weren't using nice pens. You know, that's not a thing. You don't like.
Well, everybody was on Zoom, right? It was a remote class, right?
Oh, sorry. I'm talking about when I was back in school. When I was back in school.
N-
But yes,
yeah,
I
now
don't
I'm
know what
getting all
people are
confused.
using right now. But back when I was in college, you know, pens and paper, that's the way to go. And
Okay.
I didn't have any friends who wrote with fountain pens or wrote with nice pens, really, except for my friend Mike, who was an engineering collaborator at the time. He was like one of my best buddies. And he had this cool machined pen that was an embassy pen, they call them. And they were like these knurled brass. It's like it has a very machined aesthetic. You could tell that it was like made on a lathe. And he bought it from a local men's good kind of like nice accessories spot down in downtown Boston. And I you know, that's what kind of got me biting the bug. And you know, from there I started making my own iterations of this, and by the
So
time I
you
was ready
you
to,
you you tried out his pen and you were like, I like the feel of this, or
it wasn't even the feel, it was more of the idea that I knew it was machined. Like, you ever see a design? Okay, like let's talk about the iPhone for a second. Sure, like some of the cases on the iPhones are machined, but you're not like, wow, that's machined. You're like, wow, this is an immaculate, crazy object that kind of hides its origin story. There are objects that tell you through their design language how they're made, and there are objects that don't. There are objects that are just like, how did they do this? And you kind of have to like think about it for a sec, or you have to have the knowledge to break it down. So with this pen that Mike had, it was brass, it had big knurls on it, it had had marks that show that it's circularly
right?
turned. You know, it was machined. It wasn't cast, it wasn't stamped, it wasn't, deep drawn, whatever. It was a machined pen. And I was like, wow, the process like really speaks through the object. And
I see.
that and other things like handmade knives like connect you sometimes with the way that they're made through their design language. And I got obsessed with that because what I wanted with the pen initially was not to start a company where I sold pens. It was to hold up a pen, and maybe not a black anodized one, but maybe a brass one that like speaks to the material a little bit, like a very machinable material. And I wanted people to ask me when I held up that pen in a job interview, because my goal at the time was to get a job, hey, did you machine that? And I'd be like, yes, I did. Let me tell you the story. It was essentially a business card, and I wanted it to
Ah,
open doors. I built these things to tell a story about my capability as an engineer to make stuff so that people would hire me to do things. And I'd have a career, and I was ambitious in that way. Um, beyond that, of course, like it's very, very, very meaningful to me as a person to use objects that I make myself, my backpacks, my wallets, whatever it might have been, my bicycle. Again, those are things that bring me joy when I use them because I made them for myself. I'm a DIY guy.
hmm.
So those two things kind of coming together led me to realize that other people want things made by people that
So
they
you don't
know have
buy other
legitimate
people's
relationships.
pens then, do you?
I do actually. I have a number of great pens by a couple other makers. I have like a zirconium machined pen from Daryl Caston on my desk right now. It's awesome. And
Hmm.
I would never machine zirconium because I'm scared. Oh my God, that material looks terrifying. It sparks when you machine it. It's like, oh my God. Anyways, but Daryl had this cool pen, so I bought it. It's $300. It's not cheap, but I love having these objects that are made by makers that just like,
And where you meet the maker and you have the personal story. Because
yes,
to me, it
yes,
seems like looking. So you make a decent amount of videos. You make Instagrams. You do blogs. And to me, one thing I've noticed is that you yeah, this be having yourself be communicated in what you're doing, teaching people about the process. This is a key to your this is a key to your strategy, or maybe this is just what comes out of you, as probably both. Would you say that this is your way, one of your ways of getting people to buy your product versus somebody else, is making it personalized, making it seem personalized?
It's a hunch, you know. I can't tell you if it's the winning strategy, because I've
But
never
that
tried
is
to.
one of your strategies.
I would say it's what feels good. I think it's genuine for me. And if I were, you know, when I talk about like my brand in air quotes, the things that I care about, like if you were to talk about like 5 attributes of your brand, one of them is like genuine, honest energy, you know, just being yourself. And when I write the copy on my website, I think about that. I'm not thinking about Ian makes his pens. I'm thinking about like I just make the pens, and I be with that content. That's how I create that. And when I take the photos, I'm not editing them and polishing them. It's like, no, this is just like what it is. I shoot them on wood on a friend's notebook in my shop. And when I create this content, it's not about present like some brands, and
Your
there's nothing wrong with
presentation is
this.
pretty good, though.
Thank you. I
I think you're
appreciate that.
selling yourself short.
Well, it's good, but it's honest content. It's humble content. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. This is like really who I am, and that earnest nature, I think, builds trust. And trust is important in a relationship that's transactional. People don't want to get ripped off. They don't want to pay too much. They don't want to buy something that
And
someone says, "Oh, it's made here," and then it's made somewhere else. They
so
don't want that.
your pens are $70 to $270.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
They're not cheap by any means. It's a lot to pay for an object, but I don't know. It's just kind of like the marketplace is also such that if you come up with unique designs and you bring something to the table that isn't there, people will reward that energy as enthusiasts. You know, they want to see new stuff in the space. Like, for example, I'm holding up right now a multicolored, you know, red, yellow, blue, splatter, anodized Pocket 6 fountain pen. And
Very
using
cool.
that type of look within this space is less common. Does it mean that if you made one that looked exactly the same with the same process that you'd sell sell them like hotcakes? Probably not, because I believe that, like, again, with this space, it's the sum of its parts. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have, wow, like the product is comfortable to use, it's the right price, it I understand it. It's not something that is like, you know, there's like a guise of like luxury. Like some people joke about Mont Blanc pens, which I like, by the way, and I have a lot of respect for the brand, but they say it's made out of like precious resin. You know, they're injection molded parts that are like polished and like set up
Mm-hmm.
nicely, but in some of the marketing material they call it precious resin, as if it's like a precious metal. So people laugh because you don't understand it, and there's like a guise, and you could just say, oh, it's precious resin. But like anyone who starts to break that down and doesn't drink the Kool-Aid might feel bad about spending $300 for a precious resin pen.
You mean if they've done injection molding before?
Right, exactly. And they're like, oh, that's, you know, a shot, and then you're gonna secondary operation, whatever it is. But like, you know, this stuff is complicated. And with any product and with any brand, you just kind of need to do what works for you to have low friction to be able to produce and to get there. And, you know, some people
See,
say,
but
hey,
I
Ian,
think, yeah, I mean, do you think so? Bring a little bit of the machining aspect in this. So you have more than one Citizen now, or just one Citizen?
I have 4 L series machines.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 of them that are L16s and 2 of them that are L20s that have been like kind of converted back to L16s because they have 0201 guide bushings in them. So they're like a
Okay.
little bit smaller than what some of the L20s used to be. But yeah,
So, so I mean, is machining a pen on a Citizen? I mean, that's not the easiest way you could make a pen.
I don't know. I mean, I think we were talking about indexes, you and I, the other day.
Yeah.
Might be nice, but I don't have the
But I
volume
mean,
to support it, you know?
how many pens do you sell?
I don't even know. I wish that's a goal for this year, is to have a better understanding of like my business as an
Okay, yeah.
entrepreneur.
So I was wondering that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're working, you're a solopreneur, as you say.
Yes. Yeah.
How much are you machining every single day? Are you on the Citizens every day? I mean, you can
No.
let them go, you know.
No, I'm not on them every day. And
So what do
with
you
some of
need
these,
four for? In case one breaks
so
down?
yeah, so I had one and it broke down, and that really, really sucked.
Is that the one
And
from 1993?
yes,
Because
yes,
you
and
had
it's
that in the video and you made it really look like something special. That
yeah, thank you.
1993
It's
Citizen.
beautiful. I mean, it is something special. These are great machines. Use machines, not to, I don't know. I mean, they're great.
Hey,
You
that's
can
what
make
I
stuff.
do. So
You
I
get
mean,
started on these things. Sure. Would I love an A20 that's brand new? Yes. Could I probably make a business case for it? Yeah, maybe. I think I could figure it out. But I got a little bit more wiggle room with the used machine because I don't have the machine payment. And I save up the money and I buy the machine. And I pay cash for my machines. I don't like to have debt in my business. That's something that I really try and avoid, even though there's reasons to have debt. I try and avoid it personally. And it's just like, okay, I get this machine, I put it on the floor, and it is what it is. And with these older L's, I'm learning how to fix them. I have 2 parts machines in my garage. So if you're asking how many serial number Citizens I have in this shop, there are actually 6, but 2 of them have been cannibalized and, are missing drives and stuff like that.
so you're good at you're good at repairing them. You don't have to generally bring.
I had initially I had to bring in people, and then as you
for
kind of
drives and
you get the idea, you call the service techs, they say, why don't you swap it and just change the no, it's they're like, here's how you do it, and I'm like, okay, well, let me try it. And it's bold. And yeah, when this last L16 that I set up, it's another one from the early 90s. I paired the bar feeder to this bad boy, and I'd never paired a bar feeder to a lathe before. That's hard. You had to get the interfacing cable and all that stuff and hook it all up.
You should do a testimonial for freaking Citizen. If you're able to run these machines from 25 years ago, man, it really says something. It's amazing.
I think
A
so.
computer.
I mean, they were built.
It's 25 years old.
I know. It's a Mitsubishi setup, the Meldis system. And I think they just, when they launched these machines, it was no holds barred. Citizen wanted to produce the best freaking machines ever. And they did. And yes, they're limited, the older L's from like 1990 to less than 1995. They're limited machines. One of my L16s has got 4 turning tools, it's got 3 live positions, 2 of which are static, and 1 is like a tapping head.
Okay. Because I noticed you said you'd like to get an A machine. I would have thought, so you're saying the old L's are more primitive than a new A?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're limited tooling capacity wise. Like, for instance, what I had to do.
Because the A has less tools on it than the L, but I guess this is really old. So
yeah, I think so. And maybe I'm wrong in the A20. I'm using it as an example.
The A is like, the A is like the Toyota Corolla to the L being like, the Lexus.
Man, I didn't know that, but I there's a lot.
So the M is more the Lexus.
Ooh, yeah, the M with the turret. Yeah. Tight.
Yeah.
But so okay, let's.
But anyways, this is stupid conversation.
This is about stupid. People love this. People love talking about L versus M versus A. Like, come on, they love this shit. They love this. But okay, so I have 2 L20s here, and those L20s are newer. They're from like 1997, 1998. Brand new, right? But they use Windows 95. and that was a
So
mistake.
you prefer
I
the
think.
older ones with the Mitsubishi control?
I do. The startup time is like minutes less.
Windows
The
95.
Windows 95 slows the entire machine down.
So that must have been
Um,
an experiment they did that didn't last with the Windows, because I
I
know
don't
they make the newer ones with the Mitsubishi again.
right. I don't think it lasted very long. However, the newer L's that I have six turning tools versus four. That's huge difference. That's
Yeah.
like for me. So like you asked me why do I have four? Well, because I bought two machines and then I was like, well, or I bought one machine. I learned a lot. That machine broke down. There was an auction. I bought an L just to like get it, just to get it. You know, I was like, let me get a freaking machine on the floor. Otherwise, I'm doomed. This is like back in November of last year. Imagine if I didn't get capacity back up before COVID hit. Like, not to dwell, but it could have been really, really bad. And then after that, I got
Why? There's
two
still auctions
120.
going on.
Yeah, I'm
There's
sure.
still
I'm
used
sure. I'm
machineries
sure.
going on.
I know.
Probably
I
could have
just
gotten a deal. Although, no,
shit,
you know what?
maybe.
Swiss
Citizens are
are
in demand,
really
though, is what
hot.
you're saying.
So,
Yeah,
I
it makes
mean, so
sense.
that's what you're saying. So it'd be more expensive for you to buy a Citizen during COVID, maybe, than before.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But what I had to do with that older L16 is I had to tool up with this Utilis or Utilities tool from Switzerland that was like a two-headed dragon. You know, you ever see the twin holders from Utilis? You should get into this, Noah. This is sick. So two
This is way
inserts,
over my head.
one holder. So they have a 1600 series twin, and they have a couple different configurations of it. But what it is it holds, let's say, a back turn and a thread in one insert, or like a back turn and a groove, or a thread and a groove in one insert. Or sorry, one stick. It's got two inserts on the head of it. Crazy. So imagine you buy a machine that's a little bit older, and you're like, how the hell am I going to tool this up? I need 5 stick tools, and it's got 4 positions. You're doomed. And then Utilis comes along, and they're like, hey, you know, we got this cool tool. It's 2 inserts in one. It's like $300 for the stick or something like that. But it's sick because it enables you to have another tool position. So I started diving really deep into how do I retrofit this older Citizen to produce the parts that I need? What do I need to be doing to create a business out of this tool that I bought? Because like the first machine you buy, you're never gonna like nail it. Everyone, you know, they buy something and they're like, oh, you know, 10 years later, you're like, best decision ever, or you're like, man, I wish I bought something else. But you don't know till you do it. So I bought this L, and I didn't know, like, you know, the guy that sold it to me, he was helping me set it up. I paid a tremendous amount of money to have him set it up for me, and he's like, yeah,
Smart.
we're gonna build the first programs together, and I'm gonna train with you. And I did, because again, I'm not a machinist by trade. So I bought the machine from him, and I was lucky to have the opportunity, but you know, I might have spent a little bit more than I should have, and I bought a machine that was not capable of what I want to be doing now, like literally a year and a half, 2 years later. So it's tricky, and you got to learn by doing with this stuff, and you just hope that you don't make a purchase that sinks you, which is why I think the used market is so nice for these machines, because you get into something, and let's say you're wrong, you get out of it, and you might take a bath, but like.
So it seems like, but that's a pattern I see with you. You're really, you're willing to just try things. You're not
Definitely, yeah.
afraid.
No, I have tremendous, I don't know, it's weird. I have a lot of energy around this type of stuff, and that's like a really vague way to put it, but like I have like a hunger to solve challenges and to just like do something. And it's from here, you know, it was never about money or about like climbing the ladder or anything. I just want to do it, and then I'm gonna figure out a way to do this. Like I wanted to make a pen with texture on it, you know, with that had a feeling when you held it in your hand. So I designed this faceted pen. This was a project from this year, and it's got 860 something milled passes per part. So it's like 1600 milled passes.
Wow.
It's 4 macros, and it's done in 4 sections. Well, each part is done in 2 sections, like because of the guide bushing land. But anyways, no one asked for this. No one was like, Ian, we need you to make a pen with a lot of texture. Ian, we need you to make a pen that requires an incredibly long milling cycle.
So what made you decide to make it?
I wanted it in my heart. You know, I just wanted to make a cool thing with a cool texture. I wanted to feel something with my fingers. And that led me to just like thinking, using my design hat, I started making grooved pens, like, you know, because on a, you know, machine, you can groove the parts very easily. You can make a lot of ridges and grooves. So I came up with a ridged grip, a grip that had these ridges on it. That was the first thing I made. One of the first things I made this year.
Very cool. I'd like to feel one of those.
It's cool. Yeah, I should send you a pen. You know what? I should send you a pen. But we'll work that out later. But I got the ridged grip, and it was cool. And I was like, I'm gonna make a ridged pen, something that has like more texture, so you feel it in your hand, and it's like a worry stone. You know, people like things with texture. Or I can't speak for people. I like things with texture.
All right. So is that you're making things that you think people are gonna like, or do you just want to make something that you like?
I like it. It's for me. And I there's like certain characteristics of this product where I'm out there, I'm at the pen shows, I'm connecting with my customers. I'm trying to understand what they want, you know, because it's not just about designing a product for yourself. However, with some of these things that go outside of the realm of like your normal window of business, right? Like, let's say, you know, there are things that we know are going to sell in the pen space. And you could just focus on making those and optimizing the business and doing marketing and hiring and doing that stuff. But that's not the thing that is fun for me. So I don't do that. I just like make the stuff. And then I'm like, you know, it'd be cool. This thing that sits just outside of the normal window of what would be right for business. That would be super cool. And I'm not like, what's the ROI on it? How many of these could I sell? Could I push it through my distribution? I'm not thinking about that. I just want to make the thing. And then everything else kind of comes beyond it, or comes after it. And the intuition is what drives the business.
Can you be successful doing it this way with this philosophy?
I don't know.
You don't have any debt.
I don't have any debt. But I also, you know, as a caveat to the debt comment, I did start my business in 2012, and I did work 5.5 years in product development, and nights and weekends I was running my pen company. And I also had a bicycle product innovation when I was in college, and I still run that company. And I was doing watches, and, you know, I saved money. I took all that money from my business of selling pens from 2012 until 2017, and I didn't spend $1 of it outside of my pen zone. And I was experimenting. I was doing marketing. I designed packaging. I made different models. Like, I tried a lot of stuff in those years while like under the shelter of my day job. You know, I could take crazy risks, and some of them didn't pay off. Like, I DLC'd some pens.
What is DLC?
Diamond like carbon. It's like a physical vapor deposition process. And it's crazy. It was $27 a pen with company Oerlikon Balzers to do this PVD DLC. And it's common in like the like high-end accessories market to do like PVD DLC, or like if you incredible wear resistance, you'd use a physical vapor deposition process. And there's other reasons to use it, and I'm no expert on it. Anyways, but I would try these things well under the shelter of my day job, and it would be like, that would be cool, let's do it. And I did it, and I saved up enough seed money by the time that I was 2017, when I was 27 years old. And I said, I'm gonna go off on my own, and I'm gonna do this thing. And I saved up enough money, and man, you watch that bank account like drop real quick when you go off on your own, and you start having to pay yourself a little bit. And there were some hard realizations during that time about like what gross sales is versus profit, right? Like, you know, I was subcontracting for so many years from 2012 to 2017. All those pens were machined in a local shop, and that had its limitations, which is why I decided to bring on the manufacturing in-house, which had its challenges, because I was not a machinist. I didn't know any of this stuff. I had to like learn. But anyways, you know, is it a successful business? Is it a successful model for you to just go off of your passions? I have no idea. And I think a lot of this comes down to luck. You know, if your intuition aligns with what everyone else wants. I was having a conversation with a professor the other day, who was a professor of mine in engineering school, through this Zoom class that I was like giving a guest talk at. And he said, you ever think about making a pen with a Bluetooth tracker inside of it so that I could, because I hate losing my pens. And, that's a very human story.
That's a pretty interesting idea.
Right. It's an interesting idea because you're like, okay, I don't want to buy a fancy pen that's more than X amount of dollars because I'm going to lose it. I hear that all the time. It's okay. It's like almost like in the process of like converting a customer to buying a pen, that's a major off ramp, and that's okay. I just let it be. But here comes an idea. Oh, Bluetooth tracker within the pen, and would that solve the problem? Maybe. And then you'd have a little app on your phone, find my pen, and it finds it or whatever. You partner with Tile, whatever.
It sounds like you're not excited about it.
It's not what I want to do. I don't care about that, so I don't do it. But the reason I bring this story up is because I was thinking about like what makes a good business idea and what makes it viable. That's a very human story, and that's something that people may want. You may want that. Professor may want that. Other people may say, yeah, we want that. But in reality, maybe they buy it and they don't want to use their phone to track it. Maybe its battery dies after 3 years and they lose it on year 4. The reality of whether or not the product is actually desirable for the customer is the jury's out unless you do human-centered design research. Like you go to people and you show them prototypes and you talk to them about the Bluetooth and you talk to them about the non-Bluetooth and you see how they react to it. And you understand how to listen, how to ask questions, how to understand the insights gathered from research. And you can use that approach to suss out whether or not you're going to have a viable business. And the second half of my career after I worked at Essential Design was working at a product development company. Well, actually working at a company called IDEO, which had a facet of it that was product development. And the big thing about IDEO was that it had a human-centered design practice. Every single project was part of this human-centered design approach, trying to understand insights by talking to people and developing strategies to test and hypothesize really quickly to understand whether or not your product or your service or whatever you're doing is going to stick with the customer. So I think like this because that's where my background is. So maybe subconsciously I'm at these pen shows and I'm talking to customers and I always ask questions like, hey, what'd you buy today? What'd you get? What'd you get at the show? And they take out the pens that they bought at the show if it's quiet, if we're not busy. And they'll be like, oh, I got this, Pilot, and I got this Sailor, and I got this, lacquered Urushi artwork pen. And I'm like, wow, what drew you to that pen? Like, oh, that's so interesting. Do you have any pens like that in your collection? Do you collect these? Or is this a one-time purchase? Is this a grail for you? Wow, that's a little bit expensive for me. I know. And then you try and listen to how they rationalize it. And you can soak up all these insights and start to understand whether or not your idea is going to work. It's not necessarily like, I don't know, you just kind of need to do it. And I think the greatest success that I've had as a business is by just getting out there. Like you said, I just do it. I just do the stuff. I made the pen. I put it on Kickstarter in 2012. And there was not a lot of machine pens out there in 2012. And I was like, I would say like part of one of the first waves of machine pens on Kickstarter at least. And it was successful for that reason. Had I come out with this pen in 2015, I don't think it would have been successful. And I wouldn't have had that seed money. And I probably would have kept my job. Like some of this comes down to luck and timing. Did I know that there was a large group of people, who wanted this product back then? This market, the ballpoint market, has since shrunk for me. That side of my business is very small now. However, I have peers in the fountain pen manufacturing space, like Tactile Turn, and they make predominantly ballpoints, and they're doing just fine. And Will's doing great,
Well, do you see one day hiring a few people to streamline this business, and then maybe you can be more of the visionary, do more, say, the design, guide the business? Or are you really only happy if you're doing everything?
I
Because
think,
I mean, my
yeah,
guess is, I have an assumption. Um, I'm inferring that there are that you could rank the things that you do during the day, as far as what you enjoyed the most, what you found the most fulfilling, and what you was just a necessity.
I think your intuition here is right. And I do want to hire at some point. I just want to hire the correct person. And I have one helper who works with me in the studio, and she's in 2 days a week right now. And she helps me with packing and shipping and fulfillment and assembly. And that's great because there's only so much of that I can do if I want to do the machining, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right now I want to continue to do the machining because that's the piece of the puzzle that I think you discover opportunities through the practice of the machining, right? You ever hear machinists bicker about, oh, the goddamn engineer sent me this drawing and it's got these features on it, right? So
Right.
I eliminate that entire frustration. That frustration has never, ever been my own because I'm designing them with the machine. I'm picking out those inserts. I'm like, gotta have a radius here, gotta have, I don't have enough tool spots for this, gotta make this thread pitch this way,
Right.
like, it's honest, the process, and that process drives the product. So there's fluidity in the manufacturing and the design side of things, and maintaining that piece of the puzzle under my own control is critical. However, do I need to be dunking the parts and cleaning them and taking things out of a tumbler and doing customer service emails? Not necessarily. So as things progress, I will probably bring on help, but I'm also, in the same way that I'm cautious about debt, I'm cautious about bringing on people because I'm not the best manager. I don't have formal managerial training.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it'll take a lot of emotional energy to manage people. And the emotional energy is what I need to design products. If I'm drained
Are
from
you
dealing
somewhat
with
of a control freak? A
in terms of the
micromanager?
design, no, not. I don't think I micromanage too bad. I mean, you could ask the person who's helping me right now. Maybe she'd tell you better. But I don't think I micromanage. I leave a lot to interpretation, almost too blank of a slate, and I start to see what systems are arising or where the gaps are, and then I'll fill those gaps. Like, for instance, I recently just implemented like a Kanban card system in my assembly station because I noticed that the frequency of being asked, hey, we're actually out of this product, we need to go polish these. And I was like, cool. And I would like forget that, and then she'd be like, hey, did you polish those?
What is a
And I'm like,
Kanban system?
Kanban system is from it's like a lean manufacturing
Oh,
technique,
okay.
and it utilizes these cards that have like a minimum and a maximum quantity for builds, and potentially like a location and a vendor. So like, for instance, let's say I'm making these pens. They get machined, they need to be dipped and dunked, and the oil needs to be removed from them, and they need to be hand polished. And I do that because this is a very expensive product. This is one of my most expensive products, this faceted pen. So I'll sit at the lathe and I'll polish them just so, and I'll nail it, and then I'll put the O-ring in, and I'll get it all assembled, and I'll put it on the shelf, and it goes into inventory. The Kanban system says, hey, we at all when the product drops below a minimum quantity of, let's say, 5, she'll give me this card, or she'll put the card in a special location in the shop, and I know that's my to-do pile. I grab that card, it says faceted brass pen, polish from inventory location A7, and it goes to my shelf A7, which is notated on the shelf. I find the raw product that needs hand finishing. I finish up to the max quantity, which is like, let's say, a max quantity of 20, because these start to oxidize, they're brass. So I'm not going to finish 400 of them, because by the time we get through them, they're going to have spots on them from, moisture in the air. So I'm going to finish 20 of them by hand, and I'll do that when I have time, and then I'll take that card and I'll put it back into the system. So I implemented a Kanban workflow to enable her to also tell me what to do, and for the process to dictate the flow. which is important because as much as I want to be working on the business, right? Working in the business brings me joy. Like you said, I love polishing pens. I love running the machines and thinking about different ways to tool them up. And if I hire an operator, the operator's not going to be like, hey, Ian, did you hear about this new ISCAR insert, this like Pentacut Swiss thing? Like, you know, I'm watching the chips come off of these and I think that it might be good. Unless you have some rock star operator who like shouldn't be working for you in an operator position, right? Like that's not going to happen. And that connection with the process is, I think, what keeps it efficient. And there are inefficiencies by me being so involved in the process, but at these early stages, like you said, this new
Don't you
wave,
feel like you need somebody to
2018.
collaborate with? Don't you? Wouldn't it be nice if you had somebody else to? Or
Great question. When I was working in product development, I really liked having an industrial designer guide me and say, hey, here's the design language that fits all the, you know, the insights that we derive from our human-centered design. Here's how we're going to design this. And I'd be like, oh, cool. I see that surface. I'm going to model that this way and we can manufacture it this way. And I'd start to solve the problems. But with this, I like to kind of just like allow my passion and my insights that I derive through being in the marketplace, for being a pen maker, interacting with my customers. I like that to drive the design. So if I had a designer who wasn't going to the trade shows and who wasn't talking to the customers, they would design things for themselves or based on trends. And that's not what I want. I want things that are derived from insights from my actual customers who put money in my hands. Because if I know that a customer is willing to spend with me and they're like, it'd be really cool to see this in blue, well, you better believe that I should go make that in blue because I'll sell one.
Where do you see this?
You know? So
where do you see this going in
I don't know.
In a year, in 5 years, next week?
Next week, I want to have one of these L's running. I'm setting it up right now for a new product that's like freaking awesome, new pen product. And I've got big R&D plans for this coming year. And I've got stuff that I'm going to make that I don't know if it's going to succeed or not. And it's not safe in the space. Like it's not a safe bet product wise, but it's something that I believe in. And it's, you know, I showed you in the beginning of that call there, you know, that fountain pen nib that I made. There's a desire for innovation in the space. It's stale. There's a lot of big players, a lot of big brands who maybe come up with something innovative, but it's like small innovation, like evolution, not revolution, right? So I've got ideas that are really big and I just want to put them out there, put them on the table. And because I own the machines and because I own the process, I'm going to go do it. And we're going to see what happens. And maybe that's going to become the future of my company, that product. And it will completely replace everything else. And I'm going to need to pour gas on the fire and get employees in here. And I'll be calling you and we'll get a truck come in with a bunch more machines and buy a building, and take it all over. Or I'm going to be wrong and I'm going to have spent 40 grand and I'm going to eat it. And I'm just going to like, you know, cry silent tears and go back to making product that's a little bit safer. And that's okay, you know, and I don't know the answers to these questions. And I don't think anyone really does in their business. Otherwise they'd be like telepathic and they'd be making super awesome, sweet moves all the time and totally crushing it. But
before I wrap this up,
I think like
go on.
Well,
no.
I'll end on.
I don't want to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I'll end that train of thought on the things that are most important to keep our eyes on, right? Yeah. And as business owners, we have control, and the things that I don't want to sacrifice are my own happiness, the happiness of my wife, my emotional and mental stability, my physical form. You know, I don't want to, you know, not go out and ride my bike and, you know, sit here and make a bunch of money. That doesn't make me happy. So those are the keystones to my business. That's important. My happiness, my ability to get out and go ride my bike, my ability to be a good partner and, you know, be a good husband, you know, eventually to be a good father. These are super important and these are cores. And if I start designing something that requires so much of me that it breaks those things, I'm not going to chase it, or I'm going to build a business system to chase it. But yeah. I want to keep those things in mind because that's what it's all about. You know, we as humans, we're susceptible to burnout. We can get tired
Well,
and
I'm
throw
I'm
it all away.
impressed. I'm impressed that you have that perspective, because at the same time, it just seems like you're just trying to do everything, and that's
Yeah,
you
that's
you
like,
you you understand it. I'm also impressed that you do all these things, yet you still give yourself a weekend, and understand, that that's really that's great. Even if you, uh, even if you're spread thin because of all the things that you have to do, want to do, get to do. But I'm impressed, and I can't wait to see how it turns out. Um, what what is what's something interesting you learned last week?
mm,
And I'm assuming you learned like a gazillion things last week, but just one thing that comes to mind.
ooh,
Doesn't have
that's a
to be about your business.
great question. I was talking to another machinist, and they sent me a really cool way to do like a looping macro in my newer machines, in my new L's, which I'm pretty excited about. Um,
Tell me what a looping macro is.
it's just like a way to like loop a single line of code. It's not, maybe
Okay.
it's not even a macro. It's just a way, it's like a loop, but the way that they coded it was really elegant, and it would just like repeat this line for a number of iterations. And I was like, that's nice. Cause I like the programming side. That kind of popped up. This is totally off the cuff. I'm also terrible with my memory. So this is like, you're prodding at my Achilles heel here, but, what else did I learn last week?
I try to write
Oh,
down every day at the end of the day what I did.
I like that. I have a to-do list. I mean, you should see it. It's total chaos. But
Well, that's totally another thing, but the
yeah.
end of the day thing,
Oh,
because you wonder what the hell did I do that day?
yeah.
Um,
Last week I also learned about another way to manage my manufacturing workflow from talking to another entrepreneur who said that they manage their assembly process using this company called tulip.co. And I've yet to dive in, so it's on my to-do list for
tulip.co.
today.
All right.
And it's like a way to like manage flow. Um, what else did I learn about? I don't know.
That's
I
pretty
mean,
good.
I'm constantly, I definitely have a learning mentality, and I'm constantly trying new things.
I can
But
tell.
I think one of my superpowers and also my weaknesses is that like I also don't remember. I write things down, which is again pens. Pens are important for me. They're a big
You like
important part of
writing
my
things
process.
down with a
Write
pen.
them down, because that's your external hard drive. You only got so much RAM up here, and you want to offload as much as possible. And I'm blessed that I somehow can. And just like when I go home, I want to be home. And there are unfortunate times where I'm like caught up in the business up here in
Hmm.
my head, and I'm cycling through how to solve something. And I'm like, oh, I got it. I got the idea. And it's like, yeah, but like we're eating dinner, or like, yeah, I'm supposed to be present in another conversation.
But
So
at least you understand that this is what you're aspiring to do. Some people just don't care or don't even
sure.
know. Ian, what if
Yeah.
people want to go and find the pens online or buy them, etc., where should people go?
They should go to shondsgn.com. So that's SCHON DSGN.com. So it's Schon Design, but without any of the vowels in design. Yeah, and
Awesome.
that's the best place to buy them. That's my website. Feel free to send me an email. Um, Definitely you should pick up one of these cool pens and pins. I just made this little guy, Pocky, the pocket pen. Made these little like lapel pins, and I brought this out to my table before we started this podcast
And you
today
just,
because it reminds me of.
so what was the process to making that? You just were just like thinking, oh, this would be interesting. And then you got out a pen and and drew it, or?
So I had a idea that I just like wanted to build a little bit more experience around the product, and I inject personality into this business by being present via video, by doing Instagram, and I thought about what else I wanted this year, and this pin is like more of a pin to me because I was like my best friend growing up.
So it's a pin that's a pen.
Yeah, it's a pin. But my best friend growing up playing music with me is a graphic designer. And I was like, man, if I could design a lifestyle, right? Like we talk about like designing products, but like really, or designing a company, but designing a lifestyle is the most important thing to me. And one of the things it's like, hey, who do you want to work with, right? Back to your question. Well, like I want to work with my best friend who I went on tour with in my band and like had all my formative memories with him, skateboarding every single day after high school. I want to work with him, and he's in Oregon. So I'm like, man, I got this idea, and I doodled out this idea, and he nailed it. He's a graphic designer. He completely crushed this new logo of this weird pen character, like coming out of the number 6, which is, after the Pocket 6 pen name. And, it made me smile, and I paid him some money, and he designed it, and we made the pins, and we made stickers. And that's like, it's not a, like, I don't know, like that's kind of like the point.
But normally you're the one designing. This was a special case.
When it comes to product, but like, I want to surround myself with people that I love and people that I care about, and I want to work with people that I really enjoy working with. And I also brought this notebook out. I'm not pitching the notebook, but it's on the back of it, it says Schon Design X Write. And Write Notepads is a company in Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and they make my notebooks. And it's this guy, Chris Roth, and he's awesome. And he's got this guy, John Michael, who works for him, and they're awesome. And I don't make notebooks because I think it's a good thing to sell, or it's, and sure, it's obvious, notebook with a pen, whatever. And I give them away for free with the pen orders. Every time you order a pen, you get a notebook. But I make it because it makes me feel something. And I want to work with people that are great and remind me like why I do this. And that's like the core of all of it. Someone could walk into my shop today and audit me and say, man, you're missing this incredible business opportunity for you to do whatever. And I may just be like, I don't care, because it's not really about that. If I wanted to make money, I would have become a stockbroker or whatever people do to make money. I love the flow and the chaos and the multidisciplinariness of this industry. And I think like if I could leave people with anything, if you're a machinist or if you're a small business owner, like, it's amazing what we're able to do in our industry. And if you're creative and if you understand the entire process, there's opportunity there. And it's the intersection, it's the nexus between the machining and the design and the business. That's where the opportunity is. It's not just about faster cycle times and slicker machines and more sales, more revenue. It's about everything together, which is why you see these shops where they're like sometimes like so clean and you're like, wow, it must be nice. There's like a feeling there. Does it make sense to clean them so hard? Like, could it be a little dirtier and they could save some money or like get more things done? Yeah, but like it feels nice to be in it, or it has a certain presentation. And like, don't lose track of the feeling of every facet and every interesting intersection in your business. Like, it should be fun for you to talk to your tooling rep and be like, how are we going to solve this problem way better than I'm doing it right now? It should be fun to be like, man, let me make this awesome spreadsheet to like navigate my, raw material to final product. So I understand all the inflection points and can reflect back on it later and document it so that when someone comes on to help me, they can help me with that. It's all those intersections that are important. And it's not, don't be blind about the journey to just like make the product and get it out the door. the opportunity is in those
the
nodes.
journey.
And, I think, the people, if you're an organization that has talent, the people will respect that. If you bring a culture of, it's as important the journey as it is the destination. And reflecting back on, man, we just did this setup, and the setup was wicked hard, and it took like 3 hours to set it up, and like the tooling was like this and the material was like that, and yada yada. It's like, well, how do we do it better next time? Or how do we create a workflow that feels better, even if it costs a little bit more? Because burnout is so real in this industry. Machining is freaking hard. You rip your hair out. It's so hard. And there's
Ian,
so many things that can go wrong. So,
Ian, thank you so much. This was really, really interesting.
My pleasure.
A lot of food for thought. I love your passion, and I need to try to use it as inspiration.